Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
But who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. And today we're just going to give you a case update. Going to give you a little bit of an update on the George Floyd situation. And we're going to talk a little bit about NBA Youngboy. And Mr. Youngboy, or otherwise known as Kentrell Golden, was picked up in Los Angeles for weapons violations and out of an arrest and charges that stem from an incident that happened in September of 2020. He and about 15 others were picked up for weapons possession and some other charges. And the reason they got picked up is because some of the guns that they were using were stolen, and he has a felon in possession charge. What happened was he was in Los Angeles, and his lawyers were in contact with the U.S. attorney, I believe in Baton Rouge. And these charges from September of 2020 have been kind of hanging out there for a while. And no doubt his lawyers had communicated to the U.S. Attorney's Office, we're here, if you got charges, he'll turn himself in, that kind of thing. But in typical U.S. Marshal and federal government fashion, or fascist, they picked him up on the street in Los Angeles instead of calling his lawyer to de-escalate things. That's just how they like to do it. Sometimes when people get charged with crimes federally, the federal government likes to have it under seal so you don't know it's coming. And so they issue a warrant and they pluck you off the street or out of your bed or wherever. And they do that so that so you're caught by surprise. And then, amazingly, they have a really lovely press conference. We got him. And that doesn't really work if the guy turns himself in. You can't have a splashy press conference if that happens. So that's what happened with the rapper NBA Youngboy. Now, here's the thing. He's got, this poor kid. His dad went to prison when he was young for 55 years. So his dad's out of there. Not in his life. And in 2016, he got an aggravated firearms charge. So this would be his second, at least his second, if not third, federal firearms type violation. What that means is if he's got 3 prior felonies, which I don't know that he does, but because it was unclear for me doing the research whether he has 2 or 3 or exactly how many prior felonies. But if he has 3 prior violent felonies, even if they're juvenile, depending upon the timing of them, he could be looking at a mandatory minimum 15 years in prison. And if he somehow miraculously gets out on bail or other conditions, which I don't think he's going to, that really tells me a lot. That tells me he's probably cooperating, which I don't think is going to happen in this case. But in NBA Youngboy's future, at the very least, he's looking at a 5-year mandatory minimum. And because he took off in L.A. when they tried to arrest him, he took off on foot, he very well could be looking at an extra 2 points for obstruction of justice. So, and in the federal system, they have different enhancements or points that you can get for various things, like for kind of the role that you played in an offense, if you're the leader or organizer. If you have a firearm and it's not separately charged, you can get an enhancement for that. And if you take off from the cops and you create a scene where it's dangerous, which is what he did here, then you can wind up getting a 2-level enhancement for obstruction. Now, his lawyers criticized the federal government for the way they did things, and I don't blame him, because if you've hired a lawyer, and no doubt he paid them a lot of money, I know I've had different prosecutors extend me the courtesy, hey, look, we're going to pick him up, so you've got 24 hours to turn himself in. But they didn't do that in this case, and I really wish Mr. Golden wouldn't have taken off, because that kind of justifies why they did what they did. But he's in 2018, he had a weapons and kidnapping incident. In 2019, he was in a shootout in Miami. And I don't know how many or if any of these are going to be charged, or if they were charged. I know he got a 10-year suspended sentence, and the judge discharged him from that sentence in, I think, December, in order to the return of a lot of jewelry and cash. And that's probably because they couldn't tie it to any criminal activity, because he's a rapper and he's got some dough from his music. The thing I'd like to talk about, though, is the culture that, this case could have been avoided. And it is exactly what I've been talking about in all of my videos about the brazen nature of these rap videos. And I'm not sitting here preaching, okay? I don't want bad things to happen to any of these guys. But when you are not supposed to possess firearms because you're a felon, and all of a sudden you take a video of yourself, look at me, look at these. When you do that, you give the government the evidence they need to convict you. And you really shouldn't do that. The incident that happened in Baton Rouge in 2020 in September, they were shooting a video, and in the video they had all kinds of guns, and it turns out some of them were stolen. And they want to look cool, and they want to look like they're badass, and they want to look like this. But this is a 21-year-old young man. And when I say 21, 21 is young. And your frontal cortex, your brain, in the male brain, is not developed until you're about 24, 25 years old. You're impetuous. You make decisions for your future that you can't see how it's going to impact you. You don't put in the thought. And so for every young guy out there, I want you to think. I want you to think before you act. Had this guy done, and you're innocent until proven guilty, okay? We'll start right from there. So Mr. Goulden, or Youngboy, is innocent until proven guilty. Let's just say that outright. And his lawyer made the comment that he didn't possess any firearms. He never held a gun and never possessed any firearms on that particular day. Now, I haven't seen the video, and I don't think it's been released yet. But I do know that possession of a firearm can be actual or it can be constructive, and which means I can either have a gun in my pocket or it can be nearby. And it can be joint possession, where I can possess a firearm or anything with somebody, or it can be sole possession. So, and the issue for him then is whether he had access. Basically, sole possession is not necessary to prove that he was in possession of a firearm. So if they have him in any of the outtakes playing with the guns, that's possession. The other thing they need to prove is that that they were purchased or actually manufactured across state lines. And most Springfield Arms, that's Springfield, Ohio. That's usually, depending upon what kind of firearm, it's usually not hard to prove that they were transferred in interstate commerce. So what's really important here is I can't imagine he doesn't have a top-notch legal team. He's got to have one. And if he really wasn't in possession of any firearms, and everybody around him had guns, and those people had guns just for the video, he may be able to walk from this. But given the nature of his prior conduct, given the nature of everything that he's done to date, it's going to be a tough sell, because those prior convictions come in, and then they're factored in when they determine a sentence. And if there are any other charges, the gun charge, it's called a 924C or a 922G, it would be consecutive to whatever other underlying charges there might be. So it'll be interesting. I don't revel in the fact that this guy got picked up, that Mr. Gould. I don't at all. I'm a defense lawyer, and I don't like to see anybody spend any time in prison. But I also don't like to see young guys make mistakes, make bad decisions. And when you're in the gang culture, you got to be smart about what you do. Especially, and he even said this himself, when he got the attempted murder charges. When you're known, he says, I don't really know if they target people, but when you're known, you have it harder. In other words, you're out there. You've got all kinds of social media out there, and you're doing that for your rap career, so you kind of have to do that. But if you let your guard down and you put all this content out there that shows you doing stuff, it's self-snitching. That's what it is. Self-snitching. And that's what happened in this case. They got the video, and it's self-goddamn snitching. So he's looking at least 5 years, and hopefully not any more than that. And I don't think he's going to be getting out on bond anytime soon, especially in light of the fact that he tried to flee. So that's what I know about NBA Youngboy and the George Floyd situation. The jury has been selected. They're going to start opening statements on Monday. And here's how that works. An opening statement is a opportunity to address the jury and give the showcase of what you believe the evidence is going to be. It's not a time for argument. If you watch any kind of trial, if you watch the argument on Monday, you'll hear this a lot. The evidence will show. The evidence, we believe, is going to be. The issues in the Floyd trial come down to one issue, and that's really typical of a lot of cases. It'll come down to one thing and one thing alone: cause of death. If they can prove that Chauvin caused the death, I think that they're going to get a conviction. If there is a dispute as to what the cause of death was, whether it was the fentanyl or the knee, then I think that defense has a chance. So the state gets up and gives their opening. The defense can give an opening at that point, or they can reserve it for their case in chief. Generally, you want the jury to know what your case is about. And if you have an expert, which the defense does in this case, and the defense wants to showcase their expert right off the gate, because primacy is one of a psychological principle, is you kind of remember what you hear first. And that is what you want to do in this case. So you'll hear a lot of language about the evidence will show, or we believe the evidence is going to be, that kind of thing. So then after they do their opening statements, it's the state's burden, so they present their evidence. They present their witnesses, and then the defense cross-examines the witnesses. And then the defense, if they haven't given an opening, then they can give their opening at the beginning of their case, which I don't think he'll do. I think he'll give his opening right away. And then the defense will have their experts. And it's unclear to me whether Chauvin will testify. It's unclear to me whether Chauvin will testify or not. Generally, if you can keep your client off the stand, you do. And in this case, if you have an expert that's going to have a cause of death that is contrary to what the state is, which I assume that's going to happen, well, then your client really can't add anything to that, because that's outside of your client's expertise. And so you probably keep them off the stand. So, and then after you bring your evidence, then the state does their closing argument, the defense does their closing argument, and the state has one last chance to give a closing argument, or give a rebuttal argument rather, and then it goes to the jury. And then while the jury is deliberating, the defense usually makes a motion for a judgment of acquittal, saying that there wasn't enough evidence, and the judge 9 times out of 10 denies that motion because you don't need much to get to a jury. So, with that, we'll watch and see what happens with the Chauvin trial on Monday. I'll give periodic updates on Youngboy because I think this will be interesting to see what happens. It'll also be interesting to see if he's scared enough to cooperate. We all know what cooperate means, and we all know what I think of cooperation. So, this has been Bruce Rivers, Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. We're about to receive our second Patreon funding, and when we do that, I'll give you an update as to how, because we haven't spent any of that money yet, so because it's fairly low dollars right now, so it'll be about $500 when we get our next payment. And when we do, there's somebody we're going to bail out for $500. So just keep in tune, and I'm going to tell you about the person, but I'm not going to interview him. I don't want to put somebody on the spot like that, but I'll tell you about him, and I'll tell you how grateful they were. Okay? So thank you for supporting us, and let's get up to, let's say, 300,000 by the end of April.